There's a cemetery on a bluff above the English Channel where the grass is cut so precisely it looks like green felt stretched over the bones of the dead. Row after row of white marble crosses, identical, silent, stripped of rank. But in one corner, two brothers lie side by side. One died in 1918, the other in 1944. 26 years apart, buried together in foreign soil beneath a name that once occupied the White House. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. was born September 13, 1887, the eldest son of a president. He grew up under a father who warned him he would never amount to more than a $25 a week clerk. That weight never left his shoulders. On May 26, 1944, a 56-year-old brigadier general with arthritis in his joints, a heart condition hidden from army doctors, and weak, vaguely crossed eyes, sat down and wrote a letter, a petition, his third attempt. He had already asked twice, verbally, to go ashore with the first assault wave at Utah Beach. Twice denied. So he put it on paper. He told Major General Raymond Barton it would steady the boys to know he was with them, that they would figure if a general was going in, it could not be that rough. Barton read the letter, and this time, he said yes. 11 days later, the oldest man in the invasion waded onto a beach 1 mile south of where he was supposed to be, carrying a cane in one hand and a .45 caliber pistol in the other. He wore a green wool cap because he hated helmets. Other officers checked their maps, tried to figure out where they were. Roosevelt was not confused. 6 words would follow. 6 words that earned the Medal of Honor. But that comes later. First, how a man arrives at such a moment. The First World War made Theodore Roosevelt Jr. into something his father's shadow could not explain. He was gassed at Cantigny, blinded, lungs damaged. He refused evacuation. Shot in the knee at Soissons, he went absent without leave from the hospital to rejoin his unit. Not because he was reckless, because he could not bear to be separated from the men he had led into the thing that was destroying them. War correspondent Quentin Reynolds wrote that Ted Roosevelt was perhaps the only man he had ever met who was born to combat. But what does that mean, born to combat? It did not mean he loved killing. It meant that in the geometry of chaos, where other men froze or calculated or ran, Roosevelt moved toward the sound, toward the men closest to it. He came home. He entered politics. He served as Assistant Secretary of the Navy, as Governor of Puerto Rico, as Governor General of the Philippines. He built a public life that mirrored his father's trajectory almost exactly. But the mirror was a trap. Every achievement was measured against the original. Every success was someone else's first. The son could never outrun the father because the father had already run the course and named the landmarks. So when the next war came, when the world cracked open again in 1939 and then 1941, Roosevelt returned to active duty in April of that year. Age 54, arthritic, damaged lungs from the gas that had blinded him 2 decades before. A heart murmur he mentioned to no one. He could have stayed home. He had earned that right 3 times over. He did not stay home. He went to North Africa, then Sicily. He commanded the 26th Infantry Regiment, the same regiment he had led in the First War. And in North Africa, in Sicily, he became exactly the kind of officer the Army did not know what to do with. What the Army saw was a general who looked like a vagrant. Roosevelt roamed the front lines in a jeep he named Rough Rider, an inheritance even in his choice of vehicle. He wore tattered fatigues and a wool cap that one observer said looked like a cheap wig. An aide called him the most disreputable-looking general he had ever met. He did not command from behind a desk. He commanded from the mud, from the foxholes, from the places where enlisted men crouched and waited to die. When he spotted an old sergeant, he would bellow, "God damn it, but you're ugly. You're uglier every day." The sergeant, beaming at being recognized, would shout back that the general was no handsome man himself. This was not theater. This was the transaction. A man who carried the heaviest name in American public life had learned that rank means nothing if the private in the foxhole does not believe you will stay in the foxhole with him. So Roosevelt stayed. He stayed until staying became the point. He served under Major General Terry Allen in the 1st Infantry Division. Allen was the same breed: reckless frontline courage, contempt for paperwork and protocol, an instinct to protect his men from the bureaucracy above them. Omar Bradley later wrote that had Allen been assigned a rigid disciplinarian as his assistant commander, he probably could have gotten away with his personal leadership style forever. But Roosevelt was too much like Allen. The same fire, the same defiance, the same blind loyalty downward. Two men who led from the front, who drank with their soldiers, who treated headquarters like a foreign country they visited only under duress. The Army does not reward this kind of devotion, not in peacetime, not even in war. It punishes it. And on August 7th, 1943, the punishment came. August 7th, 1943. One day after their greatest victory. The 1st Infantry Division had just taken its objectives in Sicily. Terry Allen was relieved of command. So was his assistant division commander, Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr. Bradley fired them both, not for failure, for success achieved in the wrong style. Roosevelt was devastated. Bidding farewell to the 26th Infantry, the regiment he had commanded across 2 wars, the regiment that was as close to a home as any place on earth, he wept. He wrote Bradley a note. It cut to the bone. "Brad," he said, "we get along a hell of a lot better with the cruds up front than we do with your people back here in the rear." Then silence. A general without a command is a man without a country. He exists in the Army's organizational charts as a name waiting for a line to be drawn to it. Roosevelt waited. The arthritis worsened. The cane became permanent. The heart condition, whatever it was, however bad it had become, remained his secret. He carried it the way he carried everything, silently, with the weight pressed inward against the ribs. In February 1944, the line was finally drawn. He was assigned as Assistant Division Commander of the 4th Infantry Division, a new unit, men who did not know him, officers who had heard the stories but had not seen the wool cap, the jeep, the profane greetings shouted across muddy fields. He would have to earn it again. Every bit of trust, every foxhole handshake, every sergeant's grudging nod. And he had 4 months to do it before the largest amphibious invasion in human history would put him on a beach in Normandy. 4 months. A body breaking down, a heart nobody knew was failing. The clock was already running. What does a man think about when he writes a petition to die? That is not melodrama. That is arithmetic. Roosevelt was 56 years old. His body was a catalog of damage. Gas-scarred lungs, arthritic joints that locked without warning, a heart condition concealed from every physician who might have grounded him. He needed a cane to walk. The first wave at Utah Beach would face fortified German positions, mined obstacles, artillery pre-registered on the waterline. The statistical expectation for first-wave casualties was severe. Roosevelt knew this. He asked to go anyway. Asked twice, out loud, and was denied. then sat down and wrote it. His argument was not about glory. It was not about his name or his father or the debt he imagined he owed to history. It was about the boys. He told Barton it would steady them, that a general walking onto the same beach under the same fire would recalibrate their fear, that they would look at this old man with his cane and his wool cap and think, if he is here, then perhaps we survive this. Barton read the petition. He later admitted he approved it because he believed Roosevelt would die on the beach and did not want to deny a man his chosen death. This is the calculation that war demands. One general's life weighed against the steadiness of thousands. Barton said yes. And so on the morning of June 6, 1944, Theodore Roosevelt Jr. climbed into a landing craft with men 40 years younger than him. The channel was rough, the boat pitched, the cane braced against the steel floor. Somewhere ahead, through fog and smoke and the geometry of tides, a beach waited. It was the wrong beach, but Roosevelt did not know that yet. The ramp dropped. Utah Beach, June 6, 1944. The oldest man in the invasion stepped into the surf, cane in one hand, pistol in the other, green wool cap instead of a helmet. Age 56. The only general to land by sea with the first wave. Strong currents had pushed the entire landing force 1 mile south of the intended target. The landmarks were wrong. The terrain did not match the briefing maps. Officers around him pulled out charts, turned them sideways, argued about coordinates. Roosevelt walked. He made a personal reconnaissance under fire, moving along the beach while German artillery threw up geysers of sand around him. Not running, walking, the cane tapping against the wet sand between explosions. He located the causeways inland. He returned to the landing point. He stood among confused men and said 6 words. "We will start the war from right here." Not a speech, not a rallying cry, a decision. Made by a man with bad eyes, bad knees, and a heart that was already counting down its final weeks, standing on the wrong beach under artillery fire, choosing clarity over chaos. A sergeant watched the general walking around as if he were looking over real estate while German shells threw sand over him. Roosevelt brushed the dirt from his shoulders and kept walking. For the rest of that day, he functioned as a one-man command post. He greeted each arriving regiment by name. He pointed them toward the causeways. He directed traffic like a self-appointed traffic cop. He untangled vehicles blocking the exits. When a shell hit nearby and a young soldier went flat against the sand, Roosevelt put his arm around the boy. "Son," he said, "I think we will get you back on a boat." Then he stood up and walked back into the fire. An officer who watched him that day said he had never seen courage like it. Not the reckless kind, something deeper. There is a difference between a man who does not fear death and a man who has simply decided that his death is not the relevant variable. Roosevelt belonged to the second category. He was calm because he had decided long ago that his life was less important than the job he was there to do. This is the thing his father could never give him and could never take away. The old president had built a mythology of vigor, charging up hills, wrestling, boxing, hunting, performance, spectacle, the strenuous life as theater. The son's courage was quieter. It asked for no audience. It wore a wool cap and carried a cane and spoke to frightened boys in a voice that did not rise above the artillery. Of the 21,000 troops that landed at Utah Beach that day, there were only 197 casualties, far lighter than any other beach. Numbers do not explain why, but the men who walked past a limping general who pointed them toward the causeways and called them by their regiment's name, Those men moved inland with something they had not carried off the landing craft. Not fearlessness, steadiness. The thing Roosevelt had promised Barton in his petition, the thing he had bet his life on. After Utah Beach, he did not stop. He could not stop. The 4th Infantry Division pushed inland through the hedgerows of Normandy, and Roosevelt pushed with them, riding the jeep, walking the lines, burning through whatever reserve his body had left. The cane bore more weight each day. The heart labored in silence. 36 days remained. He did not know this, or perhaps, in the way that damaged bodies speak to the men who inhabit them, perhaps he did. On the evening of July 12, 1944, Theodore Roosevelt Jr. sat in a field near Meauty, France. He had been in continuous combat operations for 36 days. He went to sleep. He did not wake up. A heart attack, shortly after midnight. The body that had absorbed gas and bullets and shrapnel across 2 world wars, that had carried arthritis and secrecy and a name heavier than any rank, simply stopped. He was 56 years old. On the very day of his death, before the news reached anyone, Omar Bradley had selected him for promotion to Major General and command of the 90th Infantry Division. Eisenhower had approved. The man Bradley fired in Sicily for being too much like the soldiers he led, too frontline, too profane, too loyal downward, was about to receive a division of his own. He never knew. The order sat on a desk somewhere in the chain of command while Roosevelt's heart gave out in a field in Normandy. The promotion and the death passed each other like letters crossing in the mail. Years later, when asked to name the single most heroic action he had ever witnessed in combat, Bradley did not hesitate. Ted Roosevelt on Utah Beach. The same man he had fired. The same man he had promoted too late. The same man who had written him a note that said they got along better with the men up front than with the people in the rear. Bradley carried that too. The Medal of Honor was awarded posthumously for the 6 words, for the walk under fire, for the decision to start the war from the wrong beach and make it the right one. Roosevelt had earned what his father earned, not by inheritance, by choosing to stand where the shells fell. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. is buried at the Normandy American Cemetery at Colville-sur-Mer. In 1955, his brother, Quentin, killed in aerial combat on July 14, 1918, at the age of 20, was exhumed from his original grave and reinterred beside him. 2 brothers, 2 wars, 1 plot of French earth. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. and his father remain one of only 2 father and son pairs to have received the Medal of Honor. The father earned his charging up a hill in Cuba with cameras watching and correspondents scribbling and a nation ready to make him president. The son earned his walking slowly along a beach with a cane under artillery fire, wearing a cap that looked like a cheap wig, telling frightened boys where to go. No one was building a mythology that morning. No one was performing the strenuous life. There was only a limping old general on the wrong beach, choosing to be useful, choosing to be visible, choosing to stand upright when every instinct said, "Get down." He had carried his father's name for 56 years. On Utah Beach, for one morning, the name carried nothing. There was only the man, the cane in the sand, the pistol he never fired, the wool cap dusted with debris, the arm around a frightened soldier. 6 words spoken into the noise of the largest invasion in human history, heard by the men close enough to hear them, forgotten by no one who did. We will start the war from right here. He walked the beach until there was no more beach to walk. And then his heart, which had been keeping its own secret, kept it one final time.